In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Krysten Peak is here to share her top rising prospects from the 2025 NCAA Tournament. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, Krysten Peak. And like I mentioned in the open, she's going to share her top prospects, at least top prospects that she feels like their draft stock is rising or has risen during the 2025 NCAA Tournament. But before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Also, check out the Locked On newsletter at lockedondaily.com. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox every day. That is lockedondaily.com. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop a podcast because we are your daily source for NBA draft content. All right, before we get into your top prospects, how's your bracket? I have to ask.
It's okay because this year, I mean, in years past, I was doing, a bracket breakdown show. I had to do all this research for my previous employer. And so I was almost like over analyzing every team. And this year I was just like, I was like, I'm just going to go chalk, like whatever. And so I went chalk and here we are, Sweet 16. And it's a pretty chalk bracket. So I'm like, okay, we're good. We're good.
You want to hear something crazy? I don't know why. I've never heard that term until like the last week, going chalk.
Really?
Yes, maybe I haven't never paid attention to it, but Leaf Tulane had mentioned it, and then I saw somebody else mention it, and now I feel like I've been hearing it every day. So I don't know why. Maybe I just overlooked it, but based off of the new word that I've learned or the new term, it just seems like that is the trend. There's no mid-majors in the Sweet 16.
We were this close, Rafael. We were a travel away from CSU being that Cinderella sweetheart, but Derik Queen ruined the show. Yes.
So he traveled. You believe he traveled?
I know it's 3 steps, but I also know it's a gather step. And I heard it explained like this, like when you're on the freeway driving and the speed limit is 65 and you go 72 past a cop, they're not going to pull you over. So if it's within 5 seconds of the game and you take a gather step and you're going to the left and it's already a tough shot and you finish fading with your right hand, kiss it off the glass, nobody's ever going to call that. No one's ever going to call that travel. But when you slow it down, yes, it's a travel, but it's also a gather step. So
I didn't see it when I watched it live. I didn't see the travel. And it was like when I woke up this morning and got on social media, the first thing I saw was Derik Queen should get his NIL deal with Travelers Insurance. And the next thing I know, I just started seeing a bunch of different comments about he traveled and so on. I can imagine if you're a Colorado State fan, or even if you're a fan that had that upset going, you are furious about the non-call there. But speaking of Derik Queen, you feel like he's improved his draft stock, and your reason, what has he shown now that he didn't show throughout the regular season? Or is it a case, and I've actually had a scout tell me, like, hey, I don't like the mouthpieces hanging out his mouth. I don't like that he just looks like he's not giving max effort, but the production, you just can't deny the production. That's what I heard from a scout.
You cannot. I mean, and the fact, like you and I have talked about this, I probably even talked about it on the podcast, the fact that he came into the season and it was all business. He heard all off season, all last year when he just coasted with Mount Verde to a national title, overweight, looks bored, so what did he do? He slimmed down 25 pounds and then he became very productive for this Maryland team as a freshman. Okay. And then to put the ball in his hands when the game is on the line at the top of the key, not even on the block, and let him go to work and make that play that, number one, shows the confidence that head coach Kevin Willard has in him as a freshman. And 2, the confidence that he has to execute a play like that. So it's just those little tournament moments that might change a general manager or a scout's mind on like, oh, well, can he really be this productive in the NBA? Does he have that dog in him? And then when you just see it turned on like that and like one of the biggest moments, the biggest game probably of his career, like that to me, I'm like, okay, Derik Queen, I will give you all your roses. You might be a lottery pick. I don't know. I'm not making a decision, but he is definitely, I think, done a lot in the last 2 games to earn that spot.
I'll dig even deeper. One, you don't see too many coaches calling an ISO play for their big.
Right.
With the game on the line. And 2, for him to have the confidence to take the shot. I mean, the reports are he demanded the ball in the huddle. And I'm an eye test guy. And I know like there's a big analytics crowd, but I just feel like the analytics and whatever module that you calculate, it's not going to show you if a guy wants the ball with the game on the line, if a guy's competitive or not. And I think that's certain things that you have to watch the game and even like the moment, season on the line. And I mean, he's the guy that's going to get drafted. He wanted to continue playing. He wanted the ball. And I mean, to me, that's something that's valuable of guys that are not afraid of the moment. And as a big, you can easily hide.
Yeah.
You can easily hide if you're a big and say, I'm going to set the screen. But again, I don't know too many coaches that will draw up a play for a big to go one-on-one in the middle of the floor. So that's
we saw it earlier this year with Cooper Flagg with the ghost screens that he did and failed at once against Kansas, and then it was Kentucky that they lost to at. And I mean, that feels like forever ago, especially the player now that Cooper is. But you're right. Like that is very rare. Like we do not see that from head coaches on ATOs.
Yeah. I'm a big Derik Queen guy. And I just think like for him, it's just his demeanor. Like, I've talked to scouts about it and they're just like, yeah, he just doesn't look like he's going hard. But I'm like, he's not a high flyer. He's getting 9 rebounds a game because he's boxing out and he's going after them. But I just think like he just always looks like, yeah, it's easy to me. Like he doesn't look like he's breaking a sweat. He's so skilled, but like I said, I've had a scout tell me, yeah, we're gonna have a hard time presenting him to our coach when the coach sees him running down the floor with his mouthpiece hanging out his mouth and say, hey, this is the guy that we
those are draft. Easy fixes.
Yeah. But hey, if you're getting 20 and 10, you can have your mouthpiece hanging out. I don't care.
Yeah.
Let's switch up to Jeremiah Fears. I am
your brother's favorite player.
Yes. Yes. James was on it early. He caught a lot of flack for it. And to me, Jeremiah Fears separated himself from the other point guards in this class outside of Dylan Harper. Averaged over 21 a game at the end of the season. Again, we're talking about a freshman that's supposed to be in high school, was not afraid of the moment. You can say he carried his team to the NCAA tournament in the SEC, which now has 7 teams left in the Sweet 16 or something like that. That has to count for something. So I think Jeremiah Fears could be a top 5 pick.
Top 5. Wow. Yeah. Jeremiah, to me, I mean, we saw it in the beginning of the season where he was leading all collegiate players in assists, and he was getting comped to Trae Young when Trae Young was at Oklahoma, and he was doing the same thing. And they're very similar size. I don't think their games are similar at all. I think their passing and their court vision, like the way he sets up, it's like he sets up the defense to get what he wants out of the PNR. I've never seen a freshman guard, like you said, who reclassed and should still be in high school. Like I have never seen someone his age be able to manipulate the defense to get what he wants. And that's what he did. I mean, we saw the lulls during SEC play, but definitely the back half postseason play and the game in the NCAA tournament, he was, like you said, separating himself from other guards in this draft class just with the way he was passing out of the pick and roll, because that's all the NBA game is, and the way he could get downhill and turn the corner. And his shot selection is improving. So I was so impressed, even though Oklahoma lost. But, I mean, he averaged 26 points and 4 assists in his final 3 games of the season. Like, I don't know what else you want.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, he's pretty divisive amongst people. They point at the inefficiencies at the rim. I think a lot of that has to do with, I mean, what is he, like a buck 80? My dad called me after the game, was like, how old is he? Like, is he even old enough to be able to play college basketball? It's like, and this is not a knock on Alex Caravan, but when they showed them like next to each other, Jeremiah Fears looked like a kid.
I know.
Caravan looked like an adult, but I'm high on him. I think the speed translates. I think once he gets stronger, adds a little bit more pace to his game. He still kind of has that one speed, but that one speed is able to get by defenders, doesn't need a screen. And I think that is very valuable in today's NBA to have a guard that can consistently get 2 feet in the paint, draw 2 defenders, and make the right read. And I feel like the game against UConn was probably the best game that I've seen where he showed the playmaking and the passing. And they left a lot of points on the table. They missed a lot of shots.
Yeah.
Have you ever checked your bank account and you wondered, where in the world did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is very easy to lose track. And that is where Monarch Money comes in. It is your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. And managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control over your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, let's talk about Tyrese Proctor. I think I'm going to write an article. It may come out tomorrow or maybe by the time you're listening to it. I've got the bones to it. And you know how it is as a writer. You got the bones to the story and you're trying to put it together. But I think he has a really good comeback story. Comeback is probably not the best word to use because it's not like he had like a terrible drop off. But he was someone 2 years ago around this time. He had this brilliant performance against Tennessee. And I thought like his stock is high. He got off to like a really rough shooting start his freshman year. Again, another reclass. I think he missed like his first 28 threes or something like that his freshman year. It was something crazy. And it really like killed his shooting percentage. But he ended up finishing strong. He showed a lot of shot creation and just the ability to put the ball on the floor in that last game against Tennessee. I thought, okay, maybe he enters the draft to be a first-round pick. He decided to return for a sophomore year, did not make the big jump that we expected. To the point last year, I felt like he may not have even got drafted, and the 2024 class wasn't considered strong. Comes back as a junior and has a solid year, doesn't have the same ball handling duties, perfected his role. And now you can make a case and say he's the hottest player in the country right now, at least shooting percentage wise.
It is unbelievable. I mean, when you look at what he did in the last 2 games, I mean, his last game against Baylor, he had 7 3-pointers. He was 7 for 8 from 3-point range. And he's also made 13 threes in the last 2 games. He also is the first Duke player to hit 5 threes in back-to-back games since 2010. And the last player to do that was Jon Scheyer, who's now the head coach. And so to watch that press conference and see Jon Scheyer get a little emotional talking about, I mean, I think it's a good comeback story, talking about the struggles that he's had with Tyrese and, you know, just the honest conversations that he's had season after season, being like, because he understands like the transfer portal is hot and heavy. How many players have we seen hit the portal in the first, 24 hours, 500 players or whoever it is? Before. I know. It's insane. It's insane. So to hear Jon Scheyer open up about the honest conversations and just seeing Tyrese stick through it, stick with it, trust in the process, you know, there's something to be said about that. And then all of a sudden it clicked. And Cooper Flagg got up there and he said, we are playing our best basketball right now when Tyrese is confident, and his confidence is through the roof, and it's helping everybody else. It's opening up the floor. It's opening all the spacing. And there's something to be said about going through the struggle and coming out and learning from it. And you're right. Like I know NBA scouts. I know a couple scouts that were like, I'm not sure about Tyrese Proctor anymore. Like this is the things that they were saying at last year and now in the beginning of this year. And now I'm sure if I were to call any of them, they'd be like, well, we got to take a look at Tyrese again, And so to see him have this moment, I mean, he's earned it. Like he could not miss against it. It was one of the best shooting performances that I've seen from a guard in the NCAA tournament.
What's crazy is, and this is not, well, it's not a typo because I'm not writing it, but this is not a mistake. The last two games are the two games in the NCAA tournament, 22 points per game, 3.5 assists. He only has one turnover in the two games, but this is where it gets crazy. 79% shooting, 81% from three. And he's 1 of 2 from the free throw line. But he was 9 of 10 against Baylor, 6 of 9 against Mount St. Mary's, 7 of 8 from 3 against Baylor, 6 of 8 against Mount St. Mary's. I mean, it's 8 attempts per game. The volume and the percentage is crazy. I reached out to a couple of scouts today and I mentioned, do you think he could creep up in the first round? And they're still not sold. But
well, and I understand that, right? Because like I went and I saw Duke play. Sorry to cut you off. I went and saw Duke and I UNC game. We talked about it. But he like his body hasn't changed, period. He still looks like he's a $170, at 6'5". Like he's got one of those AJ Johnson bodies where I'm just like, here are 10 cheeseburgers. Please eat this every day. Like just one of those sort of things. So I think, if we're talking first round buzz, especially in this year's draft, I don't think he'll get there. Maybe he will. I don't know. But I've seen crazier things. But
AJ Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. But is he forcing scouts and teams to take a second look? Absolutely.
Well, that just shows how tricky this evaluation stuff is because this year he's shooting 45% from the floor, 41% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. He's averaging 12.5 points, but the numbers he's not going to get a bunch of points because he's on a team that has so many other guys. He's played his role. The assist numbers are down because he's had to adjust. I think that has to count for something. And if he would have had this jump last year, maybe he's a first round pick.
Yeah, that's fair. Yep.
A difference a year makes. And he chose to develop in college. Like, what's the guy's name? I can't think of his name right now. He was the point guard with Banchero and that group. He left as a freshman. Trevor Keels, who left after 1 year, was a second round pick. And I think he's just fighting for his NBA career. I think you never want to say never, but every year there's a new group of freshmen and younger guys coming in. And so I think it was wise for Proctor to return to school, even though after his freshman year, I thought maybe he had a chance to have been a first round pick because he was so
just the potential alone. Yep.
Against Tennessee. All right, let's talk about Nique Clifford, who was on the other end of Derik Queen's big shot. And he was just a second away from leading Colorado State to the Sweet 16, a team that wasn't even supposed to make it that far. They had to win every single game to get there.
Yeah, they won 11 in a row, and then they were 3.6 seconds away from being the Cinderella darling, Colorado State. They won the Mountain West. They had to win out in order to make the NCAA tournament. Nique Clifford was the Mountain West Player of the Year. He tested the NBA waters last year, got feedback, decided to come back, work more on his body. He said there were 2 things that he worked on over the summer. He was in the weight room consistently and also his ball handling and just being more confident as a ball handler. And I mean, this is a dude who has he was always flirting with a triple-double every time I saw him play. He was just so calm with the ball in his hands, really good shot creator. And you just saw his confidence skyrocket, even when the competition got tougher. And so when we're looking at a 5th-year player like Nique, remember he spent 3 seasons at the University of Colorado before transferring to the rival school CSU for his final 2 seasons. But there's something to be said about a player like Nique who could literally play in the NCAA tournament earlier this past weekend, walk up to any NBA team and give solid minutes immediately with the secondary unit. So I honestly think that there's value in that, and there's value that teams see in that, I think, in the first round. And he is going to be that player, that Jaime Jaquez, whatever, that 4-year player that we hear sooner than people think.
Yeah, he's definitely helped himself. Again, another player that I thought, everyone says the 2024 class is weak, and I thought like he had a tough decision. Do I come out in 2024?
Yep.
Do I return to school in 2025, which is expected to be a stronger class, in which I think it is, and risk it? And for him, the gamble, it was a gamble either way. But
right.
For him, it's paid off. I think that he has solidified himself as a first round pick. And I mean, you just can't find a better wing rebounder in the country than Nique Clifford. 10 rebounds a game on the wing. He had some spectacular passes in the Maryland game. I want to say he's the one that made the pass that
led to the yep.
We thought was a game-winning three. And that just shows his unselfishness, that he didn't force it up. And I mean, there's some games that I watched where there's some guys that really force some shots up in the clutch. But I like Nique Clifford. I liked him last year, and he's a player that the decision that he made to return to school definitely is going to pay off. Let's talk about another guy that I really, really like. He didn't have the strongest NCAA tournament as far as numbers, but I thought he showed what he's capable of in under the bright lights, and that is Donovan Dent. I think he's the second best passer in the country behind Yegor Demin as far as just making reads. But he's a guy that I like. I would totally draft him if I were a team and he was available in this year's draft. But I want to hear your thoughts on Donovan Dent.
Donovan Dent, listen, New Mexico, they didn't play as a team, as a unit. They didn't play great against Michigan State. Donovan had 14 points, and again, it's 6 assists. He's a phenomenal passer. Prior to that, he is the first player in Mountain West Conference history to record at least 20 points and 5 assists in 7 consecutive games. And he was doing that at the end of the season. He did that all through the Mountain West Tournament. He did that leading up to the postseason play. And when I saw him at the Mountain West Tournament, I started texting scouts, and I'm like, Donovan Dent? Hello, why aren't we seeing his name anywhere in any mock drafts? And if we do see it, he's kind of in that second round, that mid-second round. I'm like, this kid is tough. And one of my favorite stories about Donovan Dent, remember, he played for that Corona Centennial team that had Jared McCain and Kylan Boswell. So it was Jared McCain, Kylan Boswell, and Donovan Dent. They went head-to-head with Bronny James, Amari Bailey. I can't remember who else was on that team for Sierra Canyon. Was what?
Was it Zaire or was that?
No, that was the year before. Zaire was with BJ Boston's Zaire, and Amari was on that team too, but he was a freshman. But it was the year after, and Dwayne it was Wade's Amari. Son? Sorry,
was it Dwayne Wade's son?
I mean, if it was, he wasn't playing. So, anyways, Bronny James, Amari, whatever. They were the two big names. And it was the CIF sectional finals, a game at Sierra Canyon. LeBron showed up with Drake, and Donovan Dent and Jared McCain went off. And that was and then I was like, oh my gosh, who is this kid playing for? Is he a Compton Magic kid, Vegas Elite? Who's he playing for? Donovan played on a small AAU team, so he never got that high major buzz, and he has just blossomed at New Mexico. And so to see him then tear through the Mountain West and just dominate, not only as a scoring guard, but passing is just been so fun for me to watch. And I'm sorry, he is just going to be that sneakily guy that's just going to either move up or he's going to come back, and everyone's going to know who he is next year.
I agree. I like him a lot. I actually talked to this guy, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. You know how it is. People's like, hey, name somebody that we don't know about that you like. And I said, hey, I got one for you. He's a guard. I said, Donovan Dent. And this particular scout was like, oh, I know who he is, but he's a California guy. So he already knew him, but he was kind of like, I just need him to stay quiet because
I know. Well, that's the thing. See, Rafael, like when you and I do a podcast like this and we list who we're talking about, like I already know that these are players that teams are like, well, keep it on the low. And I'm like, well, I have two eyes, just like you or anybody else that's watching the game. Anybody that can see that this kid has a lot of potential to be a prospect.
There's nothing like getting that text from an agent that's recruiting a player or a team that's like, you talk too much. We really like this guy, and now you've kind of like helped bring some additional attention to it. But I like Donovan Dent, and I feel like his teammate Nelly Jr. Joseph really helped
Yes.
himself with his play. All right, let's talk about Richie Saunders from I was going to say your neck of the woods, but I guess it's your former neck of the woods, who's been BYU's best player this year. The floor is yours.
So, okay, this is what I'll say about Richie Saunders is any scout that goes to BYU, they're going to see Yegor Demon. And I remember when Baylor was out there playing, first they played at the University of Utah, and then it was Baylor BYU. I swear to you, there was probably 50 scouts there. I want to say the entire Jazz front office was there. And they go for Yegor. But then you start watching Richie and what he can do. And he is like the most productive glue guy that I've seen this season in college basketball. He is so tough. And I wrote about him actually for tomorrow. And what I said is like, he does all the things that don't show up in the box score. He's getting deflections. He's getting tip rebounds to his teammates. He's winning 50-50 balls. And that's all defensively. And then offensively, he is just making buckets when they need it. Like Yegor Demon, great passer. And Richie Saunders is usually on the receiving end of Yegor creating. And so when we look at this year's draft class, I mean, I think he's a name that could sneak into like a second round consideration, or he could elect, because Richie Saunders is already married. He's living his best life, playing basketball, living in Provo. He's actually from Riverton, which is just outside Salt Lake City. So his family's all there. So he could actually elect to return and play a year with AJ DeBonsa and continue to grow and live the BYU life. I don't know. But what he's done, I mean, he had 25.7 rebounds in the win over Wisconsin in a 2-point win. Like, if he wasn't on the court, there's no way they're making it to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2011. And then the game, I'm telling you, it was Iowa State. I remember I was at a different game and I was watching this game on my computer. It went into double overtime. Richie Saunders was incredible. He finished with 23 points. He led all BYU players, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, just a little bit of everything. But it was him who they were going to when the game was on the line down the stretch.
He's had a phenomenal year, 16 points a game, but it's like 50, 40, 51, 43 shooting splits, 83% from the line. If I'm not mistaken, I heard that he's 24. I haven't done the research.
Yeah, he did. No, he did his 2-year mission. He's LDS, so he did his 2-year mission. And so he's obviously older than,
Yep.
I mean, he's not the oldest. What's funny is he's not the oldest player on BYU. There's another player on the team. I can't remember his name, but he's 26. So, I mean, BYU is always going to have older players. That's always going to be a thing because they allow players to hold their scholarship when they go on their 2-year mission and are able to return.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting choice for him simply because if you stay, you'll be a little bit older next year. And that usually never is like a good thing in the eyes of NBA scouts. But you'd play with AJ, and maybe, I mean, I think it's unlikely now, but, the chance that Yegor, AJ, and Richie comes back, that's probably a team that's going to enter the preseason as the number 1 ranked team in the country.
Yegor is not coming back. Come on.
Actually, I thought like if he really would have struggled in the tournament, I thought there was a chance because he did not look good in that Iowa State game. And there were times where they weren't playing him in the clutch. And so I thought he needed a strong performance in the NCAA tournament. He's delivered. And so I think now that probably has closed the door. So sorry, BYU fans, if you were dreaming that you'd get those 3 back. But Richie and AJ will make a pretty dynamic duo. I don't know like what he should do, to be honest with you. I do think that he is a fringe NBA player. He has a skill set to hang his hat on, which is the shooting. Like I said, he's 24. I mean, you said he's living his best life, so I don't know what he should do. Usually,
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things, and I'm sorry to cut, but it's one of those things that's like, what does he want? Does he want to make the NBA? If he does, then you leave this year. If you want to continue to just play basketball for BYU and, play with AJ DeBonta, probably probably the best player that's going to come through BYU ever, then you do that. So.
Yeah, I don't know if another year hurts him because he's already 24. It's definitely probably safer financially for him to return to school because if you're not a top, in my opinion, 25 pick, then you're risking signing a two-way deal. And so I think if you're locked at 25, then you give yourself a little bit of wiggle room with 5 picks to be a first round pick. But other than that, I just think it's going to be two ways. Let's switch over to Danny Wolf. Danny Wolf was he's a guy that a lot of scouts really like. I had a GM tell me that they thought he was the best or the most skilled big in this class. And I was like, I don't know. I think there's some other guys that are in the discussion. But tell me why you think Danny Wolf has raised his profile.
Danny Wolf is probably the buzziest name that I've heard from NBA scouts and executives. And, he was at Yale. He transferred from Yale. And even last year, I was hearing, oh, have you seen this 7-foot point guard from Yale that they're not even playing? And I'm like, what? And then like Danny Wolf, I'm like, whatever. And then he transferred to Michigan and it's just been like exploded, and his passing, Rafael, is so dynamic for a 7-footer. I can't believe some of the passes he makes. Yes, he's tall. Yes, he can see over the defense. But the way he whips it, not only when he gets double teamed on the block and he finds the person in the corner that's floating, but on the top of the key, the passes he's making off the top of the key, whether it's through pin downs and he's getting the mismatch situation from his teammate. I mean, his passing, I think, is probably one of his most impressive attributes. And he's got a two-way skill set that I know a lot of NBA teams like, and they think it can translate to the game in terms of what the modern day NBA big is.
Yeah, he can pass. He moves incredibly well for a guy listed at 7 foot 250. The scouts I've talked to like him, but some are a little bit divisive because he turns the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
And the question is, like, if the passing is the best skill set, how often is he going to get the ball? And then I had a scout tell me that he says, yes, the turnovers are high. One turnover is going to be because he's just going to throw the ball in the fifth row. He said another turnover is going to be just because the teammates aren't ready for that type of pass. Like they're going to cut, they're not going to be looking, and it's just a pass that you're not expecting from your big. He's like, then another turnover is just going to be the turnovers that you get when you handle the ball. He's like, that gets you 3 right there. But he's like, one of them is just because he's such an advanced passer that people aren't going to be ready for it. But I like him. I first heard of him or start tracking him when he represented Israel at the U20s. I want to say it was the summer before last year. And that's when it was the summer after his freshman year. And I wondered, like, why isn't this guy playing more for Yale?
Yeah.
And then coming into this season, a friend of mine was at a Michigan practice and he calls me. He's like, lottery pick. And I'm like, I mean, he's good, but I don't know about lottery. And I still think it's a reach, but it's not out of the question because all you need is one team to like you.
Yep.
And if there's a team that likes him and they feel like he could be that big that can make plays out of DHOs and they can just kind of, get creative with him, maybe he does go in the lottery. You don't find too many 7 foot, 250-pound playmakers that move like he does. So it's not out of the question.
Outside of this list, I think Tahad Pettiford is playing extremely well. I thought John Tonji had one of the single greatest game in the first weekend with his performance for Wisconsin. We hear the same names at the top of the draft, but I love the tournament and I love the NBA draft season specifically because then we start hearing different names creep into the mix. And that's my favorite part. I love seeing guys that are just staying the course, study the course, and then come draft season. And I save this every year. Like I'm walking into the NBA draft scrimmages and there's always a scout that says, all right, which player here is going to make themselves a millionaire? Because we always see one or two player just skyrocket. And it starts right now in the tournament. And then after that, so it's the best time of the year.
Yeah, I think of a guy that just kind of made a name for himself and came out of nowhere. It was at the combine, but it was Jalen Williams. Like he literally
Yeah.
goes from, and I was there.
Yeah, we all
To,
and he. My favorite part about that story, Rafael, and you were there probably when I was asking him about this, but he did enough in the first day of scrimmages to shut it down. We see that all the time every year, to where the agent is like, "You don't have to play the next day. Let's shut it down." And Jalen played both games, and when we were talking to him and his media availability, he said, "I didn't come all the way to Chicago to play one day of scrimmage. I came to play." So I'm gonna play. Like, I don't care what my agent says. Like, I'm gonna play. So I think scouts love that even more.
we're gonna have a discussion on the combine this year because they're
Yes.
supposed to play, and I wonder how many guys are going to actually play. So looking forward to that. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Stay with us. We have a lot more content coming
Draft
for you.
season.
Draft season around the corner. Krysten and I will be in New York for the McDonald's game, so we'll have some content there coming. I guess that's next week. So stay tuned. We are out of here.